Hi, everybody. I am sorry for the delay. Welcome to the Poets in Pajamas reading series. I am Joy Ladin. Had a little technical difficulty. Hang on one second while I send a message. Yes. So, okay. Thank you for your patience. I'm delighted that you're here. I'm grateful to Sundress for doing this series and for inviting me to be part of it. I am not in my pajamas, but I am in bed, which is where I do as much of my writing as possible. That's my favorite place to write. And so I'm going to hang out and burble for a few minutes while waiting for people to join us. And I think while I do that, I'm going to give you some biographical information about me. As I said, my name is Joy Ladin. I have an academic title, the David and Ruth Gottesman Chair in English at Stern College for Women of Yeshiva University. I've published 9 books of poetry. Last year, I published 2 of those books, and that's mostly what I'm going to be reading from tonight. One is called Fireworks in the Graveyard. That was published by Headmistress Press, which is a wonderful press devoted to publishing lesbian poets. And the other book is called The Future is Trying to Tell Us Something, New and Selected Poems. And here is what those books look like. The Future is Trying to Tell Us Something is from Meadow Press, which has published most of my work to date. Okay, I am going to get started with reading, and again, my apologies for the delay in getting started. I'd like to start by reading a couple of poems from Fireworks in the Graveyard, which was a book that was mostly composed during a summer, and actually a lot of the poems grew out of this time of day. I'm on the East Coast, so this is sunset time. I live in a beautiful semi-rural area, and I would go out walking every evening at sunset. This poem is called Centrifugality. I break apart like a family, my members wandering off in different directions, my reptilian nature from my conscience, my stupidity from my intelligence. I think of this as dying, though none of me is dead. I'm frantic to bestow my innermost blessing, but my innerness is tiptoeing toward the horizon, and my blessing has risen on its own 2 legs and become the realization that blessing is all there is. My forehead opens like a window. I am climbing out to scatter myself on the wind. Here is another poem from Fireworks. In addition to poems about summer in a beautiful rural area, there are a number of love poems in the collection particularly from the beginning of the relationship with my wife, when things were, we didn't know each other yet, and so it felt like there were ups and downs, which can be tough for a relationship, but is actually really good for poetry. This is called Indian Takeout. We drink wine and feel shy. Sauvignon pools in adjacent flutes. The glasses kiss. We don't. I'm tired. You're getting sick. Unromantic silence, one of love's favorite idioms. just awkward enough to be intimate. You tear a poorly pillow in half, words I neither swallow nor express, thick on my tongue, like bread. When I was finishing my MFA, one of my advisors commented that my work was full of binaries, and he said, if you want to grow as a poet, you need to learn to write things that are, life isn't a binary, so you need to see things in more complicated ways, not just absolutely one thing or the other. I would say that, the binary is still a struggle for me. But this is a poem that attempts to use a kind of binary to get beyond that binary perspective. It's called Geese. The geese are leaving, so am I. Our ragged formations sink and soar, drawn along magnetic lines. Life is the iron in our brains, death the wings that beat to either side. There are so many points on the compass now. Every one is mine. And this is the final poem in Fireworks in the Graveyard. It's called Hallelujah. I'm becoming what I've always been, dust and silence, but also earth and the hush of shifting soil, silk splitting ears of corn, stalks snapping and sighing, breezes, hurricanes, proposals of marriage, hatchling turtles hissing on beaches, subatomic forces linking arms in stochastic dances, deeps calling unto deeps, busy signals, outgrown terrors, raindrops freezing into stars of snow, the hallelujah of autumn angels, urging grass to grow. I just wanted to say that final line is stolen from a rabbinic commentary that said, every blade of grass has its own angel urging it to grow, which is a way that I would love to see the world. I think that is fabulous. Okay, now I'd like to read a few poems from The Future is Trying to Tell Us Something. Yeah. I write a lot of religious poetry, for lack of a better term. I don't know, devotional poetry, but I did write an entire book called Psalms, which consists entirely of psalms. In this case, first person addresses to God. And I'd like to read one of them. You are making me now, right now, the clay of me warm in your hands, the hands of me warmed by your hands that shape them, shape a heart that's never been beaten, skin that shivers in secret places, places that will never be touched, except by the maker, hunched patiently over the stupidity of matter, leaving your mark between my eyes, my hips, in the clay turning slowly in your hands, blinking a little in your light, as I learn to forget the tenderness you reveal in the act of making, to confuse the feeling of your fingers moving inside me with smaller, less luminous fingers that will never reach as deep, whose love will never make me something that can think, can suffer, as your love, finger by finger, is making me now. Another, I don't know how to say this, another kind of work that I've tried to do as a poet, in addition to finding language for the experience of God, language for speaking to God, language for trying to get God to pay proper attention to us, are poems that try to find language for transgender experience. And this is a poem that is a riff off Langston Hughes' poem that is very, very famous. It's called It Like Me, and it grows out of the experience, which is unfortunately not uncommon for transgender people, of being referred to as an it. Earth is an it and a she and an it like me. Earth has no womb, no monthly bleeds, has never kept house for patriarchy, isn't really much of a she. She is an it like me. Fellow it, let's make a we, a publicly secret society of its whose she-ness is hard to see, is basalt magma and molten sea. Its who are worlds, its like me. When I was just starting out as a poet, which was, strangely enough, was during junior high school, I fell in with a group of local poets, and they took me around to readings and things like that. And I would say my stock in trade was writing really upset poems about my family, and mostly about my father. This is a more recent poem about my father that is written after becoming a father, and that which gives you a more complicated perspective. It's called I, Robot, for those of you who are not science fiction fans. That is the name of a collection of stories by Isaac Asimov, the great science fiction writer and science writer who invented the word robotics, I think, and the 7 laws of robotics. He imagined robots would have to be programmed with. Anyway, this is called I, Robot. The smell of robots learning to feel lonely, wafted from aces and bantams, in which massively parallel positronic brains began to grasp what it means to be human. My father and I never meant to be human. Our fingers turned pages like pincers of robots. Loneliness drove us faster than light into paperback futures where there were no bodies bulging on couches, no heaps of husks, no apple cores, no incomprehensible silence. My father passed without glancing on the stairs, stopped answering when I spoke, stopped sharing aces and apples, died as he lived, in accordance with the unwritten laws of robotics. 1. Robots are neither sons nor fathers. 2. No robot believes there are any others. 3. The world is full of robots. 4. If a robot could say, I am lonely. 5. It wouldn't be a robot. I would like to finish with 2 unpublished poems. One is from a more recent kind of work as a poet that I'm trying to learn to do, which is I'm trying to learn about my own whiteness, what it means to be white in this world, and how that should or could play a role in the writing I do as a poet. At the moment, that often means just sticking in the word white and whiteness a whole lot, but this poem is a more attempts to tell a story about that. It's called Watching My White Mouth. I present my white mouth at the police station desk and try to confess to the crimes I don't even realize I'm committing with my unstigmatized pigment. Do you remember that time, my white mouth asks the white policeman who pulled me over for an expired inspection sticker and let me off with a warning? You could have shot me then and there when I reached for my registration. Instead, you let me sit in the car, taking your sweet time, so I'd think you were writing a ticket. When you said goodbye, we were almost friendly, and I was still alive. No one, not even you and I, witnessed our whiteness kissing at the scene of the crime. And I'd like to finish with a poem from a sequence I'm working on. These are poems that are written in the voice of the Shekhinah, which is in Jewish mysticism, the Shekhinah is the female immanent aspect of God, the aspect of God that shares human experience. And this version of the Shekhinah speaks in language that is made by combining God's monologues in Isaiah, which are fabulous, with language from Cosmopolitan magazine articles. This one comes from a passage in Isaiah 40 and a Cosmopolitan article called "Here's Absolutely Everything You Need to Know About Getting an Emotional Support Animal." It's called Comfort Animal. A voice says, "Your punishment has ended." You never listen to that voice. You really suck at being comforted. That another voice says, "Cry." That voice always gets your attention, keeps you thinking about withered flowers and withering grass and all the ways you're like them. Hard to argue with that. Death tramples you, an unhousebroken pet trailing prints and broken stems, pooping anxiety, PTSD, depression. It's better to be animal than vegetable, but best of all is to be spirit, flying first or maybe business class with your emotional support animal, your body, curled in your lap, soaring with you above the sense of loss you've mistaken for the closest to God you can get. You want to cry? Cry about that. Who do you think created the animals to which you turn for comfort? Dogs, miniature horses, monkeys, ferrets, hungers you know how to feed, fears you know how to quiet. I form them, fur them. It's my warmth radiating from their bodies, my love that answers the love you lavish upon them. Your deserts and desolations are highways I travel, smoothing your broken places, arranging stars and constellations to light your wilderness. Sometimes I play the shepherd, sometimes I play the lamb, sometimes I appear as death, which makes it hard to remember that I'm the one who assembled your atoms, who crowned your dust with consciousness. I take you everywhere, which is why wherever you go, I'm there, keeping you hydrated, stroking your hair, laughing when you chase your tail, gathering you to my invisible breasts more tenderly than any mother. You're right, you never asked for this. I'm the reason your valleys are being lifted up, the source of your life laid bare. Mine is the voice that decrees, that begs your anguish to end. When you suffer, I suffer. Comfort me by being comforted. Thank you. I'm going to stop reading now, but I am happy to continue this conversation if you have questions or things you'd like me to talk about. I am happy to do that. Just send your comments in. And I want to mention that the poem that I just read, Comfort Animal, has just been accepted by Poetry Magazine. And when I was a very young but grown-up poet in my 20s, I heard a much older poet say, all of us have spent much of our lives collecting rejection letters from Poetry Magazine. And I have collected a lot of rejections from Poetry Magazine. And in fact, I thought that I would never get an acceptance from them. So this crosses something off my bucket list. I'm really enjoying the little hearts and graphics rising on my screen. I've never seen that before. I am not wise in the ways of Facebook. Hmm. Um, I was advised to have stories ready to offer, while waiting to see if folks had questions or comments. Um, I guess I just want to make a comment about the process of writing the Shekhinah poems, which doesn't feel like a process of writing poems. It feels like hang on one second. Because what I do is I grab words from Isaiah and I throw them down on the page, and then I look for an article in Cosmopolitan, which always seems like a losing proposition. How could I possibly find a Cosmopolitan article that resonates with what Isaiah is saying? But so far, every single time, there has been a Cosmopolitan article that that seems to be in a weird kind of dialogue with Isaiah. For example, there's a Cosmopolitan article called "Stop Looking for the One," which strikes me as exactly the kind of thing that Shekhinah would say. Anyway, by throwing these chunks of language together, um, the poem starts to say things that I'm not actually saying, and it feels like there is this voice, this large voice with a perspective and concerns that aren't actually mine, that starts to emerge. Okay, I got a question from Sue. Can I speak a little bit more about the binary? So, yes, I can actually, dangerous question. I can speak a whole bunch about binaries, Sue. So binaries, first of all, are artificial categories. Human beings always create them. They're mutually exclusive opposite categories, kind of like yin-yangs. So as a transgender person, the binary that I spend most of my time thinking about and grousing about is the gender binary, the idea that all human beings are and should be completely dividable into male and female. And males and females are absolutely and essentially different, and there's no crossing or mixing between them. That's the way binaries make us think. But other binaries like light and darkness, life and death, we rely on binaries to help us deal with complicated things. And like gender, nothing in life actually fits binary categories. Human beings don't divide equally into two opposite and equal categories. Even life and death don't divide equally into opposite categories. But the gender binary is a very, if you're a transgender person, particularly from my generation. When I grew up in the 60s and 70s, I had no real awareness of other transgender people. I didn't hear what other transgender people thought about gender. I kind of felt like I was the only one in my world who wasn't either male or female in some kind of essential and easy way. And I didn't fit into those categories, but I felt that I had to. Either I wasn't human, because human beings fit those categories, or I had to fit into them. So I tried to use that language to say things like, well, I'm a female in a male body, and these kinds of things that don't actually make very much sense. But when that language of there are only two kinds of people, male and female, everything can be divided that way. When that's all you have, you mix and match that language as best you can to define and express yourself. I lived as a man into my mid-40s until I literally couldn't do it any longer. And when I started living as myself, I was still in that binary place. I thought that I would miraculously wake up and blossom as this female woman that had been trapped inside my fake maleness, and that, that just isn't the way human beings are. What happened was I started to live as who I really was. I stopped trying to hide who I was, but I didn't know who I was because I hadn't let myself live the person that I was. So at first I was very concerned about fitting the other side of the binary, right? Spent most of my life trying to hide inside the male part of the binary. Now I was trying to measure up to the criteria of the female part of the binary. But the longer I lived as myself, the less I became concerned with things like, wait, am I wearing the right clothes to would a woman wear this? Would a woman do this? Would a woman say this? And the more I was concerned with being myself. Am I being actually who I am? Am I being authentic? What do I want? What do I need? So my gender identity, which remains female, became, I would say, a smaller, still crucial part of myself, but really not a part of myself that gets that kind of focus and energy. Sue, I don't know if I'm answering the question that you were asking, but the last part of what you said that I know of is, how am I dealing with it? So because I'm a kind of transgender person that used to be called a transsexual, born into a body of one sex but identifying with the opposite gender, I use the language of femininity. I use the stuff that the female side of the gender binary provides to make myself visible and to express myself and present myself in the world. But I don't hide that I'm transgender. So I don't do this as a way of masking myself. I do it as a way of revealing more of my wholeness. I feel like there might be other comments, but I am not, for some reason, seeing them. So if you've commented and asked a question and I haven't responded, I want to apologize. I'm clicking comments and this is not getting me anywhere. Anyway, that occurs to me that I got that started by talking about my MFA advisor's comment about my addiction to thinking of the world in binary terms. And that was something when I started writing as myself, instead of writing as this pretend man. I really have had to push myself to get to think in ways that are outside this binary way of thinking, to have a more whole sense of myself and a more whole sense of existence. So I am not, oh, okay. Okay, just got another comment about the I, Robot poem and the idea that every robot thinks they're the only robot. If you read the Isaac Asimov stories, I don't think this is an idea that is in those stories. Asimov has only 3 laws of robotics, and they're designed to make sure that robots won't go rogue and disobey people and hurt people. And his stories are about the kinds of glitches that might happen with those laws. But for me, that line reflected the fact that I think the sense of isolation and loneliness that I had when I was growing up and living with my father, particularly as an adolescent, was partly, of course, very different from his, because as near as I can tell, he's not transgender or queer in any way. And some of what I was going through definitely had to do with that. But some of that sense of loneliness, I think I learned from him, and that it was there was a way in which he felt and taught me that to be a smart person, to be a person that he respected, you had to be too smart to really acknowledge your own vulnerability and to give any importance to your feelings. And I think that was really isolating. I think he was unwilling to recognize what other people were feeling and when his feelings were like those of other people. But I kind of learned that from him. So on the one hand, I'm trying to mirror and reflect and live up to this idea of his, but that idea is enhancing my own sense of isolation. So he was kind of teaching me those weird laws of robotics, and they separated us from one another instead of bringing us close together, which I think is what I wanted. I think I wanted a sense of kinship with him, such that I was willing to internalize this stuff that was, horribly destructive way of thinking about feelings and being a person. So that's what that rule meant, that that to be like him was to internalize the sense that I wasn't like anybody. My wife always, when she goes to my events, she always encourages me, tells me, answer the question. And in this format, it is very hard for me to tell if I'm answering the question, because I can't see anybody's face. But I hope that was responsive. Mm. Thank you, everyone, for coming and listening. And I hope I get to meet you and talk with you in person. And yeah, this has been wonderful. And thank you again to Sundress and to Anna, who's helped set this out, to Anna Black. Thank you, everybody, and have a good rest of the summer and a wonderful evening. Bye.